Yesterday's prophecies, today's headlines. This is the Hal Lindsey Report. And now, Hal Lindsey.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hal Lindsey Report. Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah is the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia. What is today known as Saudi Arabia is the birthplace of Islam. Its founder, Muhammad, was born in the city of Mecca. Mecca is regarded as the holiest city in all of Islam. It is considered to be so holy that no non-Muslim is permitted to enter the city. It's one of the pillars of Islam and a binding religious obligation that all Muslims worldwide make at least one pilgrimage to Mecca during their lifetimes. The Grand Mufti is the highest official of religious law in a Sunni Muslim country. Moreover, he is the president of the Supreme Council of Ulema, or Islamic scholars, and chairman of the Standing Committee for Scientific Research and Issuing of Fatwas. Therefore, as Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia, when Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah issues a fatwa, it resonates far beyond the borders of the country. Last week, the Grand Mufti was asked by a delegation from Kuwait about pending Kuwaiti legislation banning the construction of new churches. He answered by issuing a ruling. He told them, and I'm quoting now, "It is necessary to destroy all the churches in the region." The Islamic Hadiths say that Muhammad declared from his deathbed, "There are not to be two religions in the Arabian Peninsula." Islamic authorities interpret that to mean that only Islam can be practiced in the region. The Grand Mufti stressed that Kuwait is part of the Arabian Peninsula. Do you remember the worldwide hysteria that followed the declaration by a totally unknown pastor of a teeny fringe church in Florida that he was going to burn a Koran? He bought a Koran with his own money and burned it on private property. The Muslim world erupted in flames. In Afghanistan alone, more than 20 people were killed in the rioting. UN workers were seized and beheaded. Pastor Terry Jones was condemned by name by the President of the United States. He was condemned by members of Congress. Bill O'Reilly of Fox News said that Jones had blood on his hands. Imagine what might have happened if Terry Jones, pastor of the 50-member Dove World Outreach Center of Gainesville, Florida, had threatened to burn down all the mosques in town. Now let's take it a step further. What if instead of Terry Jones of Gainesville, Florida, speaking to his 50-member congregation, it was the Archbishop of Canterbury calling for the destruction of all mosques in England? Or, going still higher, the Pope or the Chief Rabbi of Israel? Imagine the non-stop media frenzy that would follow such a declaration. Picture the parade of politicians and clergymen that would line up at the microphones to denounce such racist bigotry. One would scarcely be able to keep up with all the apologies and hand-wringing. The media would be forced to conclude that the Islamic uprising and carnage to follow would be justified, given the provocation. But when the highest Islamic authority in the birthplace of Islam calls for the destruction and removal of Christian churches across the Arabian Peninsula, the mainstream media just yawns. Here's what gets lost in the fog. First, in the West, we're increasingly comfortable with self-censorship to make sure we don't run afoul of Islamic Sharia law or anger the Muslim hordes who have proven they are willing to riot and murder at the least perceived insult. When the Grand Mufti, the supreme Islamic authority of Saudi Arabia, issued his fatwa to burn down all churches on the Arabian Peninsula, he quoted an Islamic hadith as his authority. But saying that Islam's hadith are responsible for inciting violence against non-Muslims is deemed prima facie evidence of advanced Islamophobia. Claiming the obvious, that the teaching of Islam are the source of Islamic terrorism, is forbidden lest one be accused of intentionally slandering Islam and therefore being politically incorrect and may be targeted for reprisal. And we all know what happens when somebody slanders the religion of peace, love, and tolerance.